we do have a very special guest here on Columbus Can't Wait. We are joined by Sarah. Yeah, excuse me, I got tongue tied. Okay? No, I'm not. I told you I'm not.
Sarah is here.
Oh,
Sarah, how do
Jesus.
you pronounce your last name?
Ingles.
Sarah Ingles.
Unless you speak Spanish,
Like
you can
Laura
say Ingles.
Ingles.
That's what I was going to say, Ingles.
Do you know who Laura Ingles Wilder is?
No.
Was it Little House on the Prairie?
Yeah.
It's a very wholesome show.
It's great.
Never mind.
I was supposed to be named Laura, but being Laura Ingalls is an actual character from the show.
Yeah.
So my mom's favorite names were Mary and Laura, who are both characters in the show. So it didn't work out. So I ended up with Sarah.
Yeah.
I was almost named after, I'm not going to say it on this show. But I was also almost named after like a character on a television show.
Okay.
Yeah.
What show? Now I'm curious.
No, because the people will watch this. We'll put it like behind the scenes or something like that.
Oh, I know what show.
Yeah, you know what it is?
I know what show it was.
It's really bad.
Let's just move on.
Yeah, we gotta move on. It's really bad.
I know what show it was.
Right? I've told you the story. Have I said it on here before?
Never.
Well, now she has FOMO.
He who shall not be named. We know what show.
Oh no!
I don't know who you're talking
I
about.
might be on the. Okay.
Oh
you
my
know
God! The show is Family Matters.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, my mom almost named me after Urkel and everything, Jalil, because my last name is White. And so she was like, "Yeah, I want for everybody loves Urkel, even though he's nerdy or whatever, blah blah blah. And I want you to know you could be yourself, and people will still like you." I'm like, "Mom, you were trying to put a target on my back for the rest of my life."
God, I thought you were gonna say the Cosby Show. I just have to say it now. And then I was like, "But there is a Malcolm. Wasn't there a Malcolm
on the spinoff, Malcolm and Eddie?
On the spinoff, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
no. Okay. Back to Sarah.
Laura Ingalls.
I'll never forget how to say your name
but
again.
You would have had to wear you could have never participated in that prairie. Remember that prairie?
But honestly, I got it all the time.
There was.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
What was the fashion moment?
Target was selling like dresses that there were all these TikToks about they were straight up prairie dresses.
Why were they doing that?
I don't know. Throwbacks. Yeah.
Oh, Jesus.
We're still trying to figure it out.
Because I was like, this is a little, I had a few things.
Yeah.
But some of it was just like a little too far for me.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But thank you, Sarah, for coming on the show. We're so excited.
Thank you for having me.
Excited. I've been really excited to talk to all the people running for school board. I don't know. I have like a fixation.
Yeah.
We're both parents.
Yeah.
So,
That'll do it.
Yeah. That is probably where the fixation
third person though?
That'll do it.
Yeah.
Third person this season.
Current school board president.
It's great.
We've also interviewed Brandon.
Great.
And so you are our third candidate on. And I think that these are super important because everyone goes to school. Like, I guess every single thing we do on this show revolves around people's everyday life. But everybody has an intimate relationship with school.
Yeah.
Yes, you have an intimate relationship with like other levels of government, but it almost kind of like goes over your head sometimes because it doesn't feel as tangible. But most of us, unless you were like homeschooled, we've all like sat at a desk and walked through the halls of a school.
And like even more is like everybody has an opinion on like how schools are supposed to run.
Oh yeah.
Like everybody has like their own like memories that like inform like the way that they view schools. And so I think that this is probably I'll tell the truth here. Probably the most that I paid attention to like this race, the school board, race in my entire voting life or whatever. I'm 31.
You think that's because you're getting older? You think that's because you have kids? Like,
I think it's probably a lot because of the show. You know, when we first started it, we said we wanted to increase like the political literacy in our community and that people need to be involved and they need to know what they're talking about, so on and so forth when they're voting. Say voting is important, but then there's no resources to find out what you're voting for. Yes. And I didn't want to be a hypocrite. And plus, I guess we was drinking the Kool-Aid and everything too. It's like, all right, no, this is true. I should probably know, who's running and all of that. So and to your point, I am a parent. My daughter is 11, so
and my daughter is also school age, elementary school age.
That was way better than what I said.
No, it's all right. Hey, we've given so many breadcrumbs at this point. Like,
Yeah, true.
if you're like stalking us, like you can just go ahead and piece it all together. But Malcolm also didn't mention that he went to CCS.
Oh yeah, I'm a Carter City School.
I knew that actually.
Yeah.
You went to Centennial, didn't you?
Yeah, did I tell you?
You might have told me, or no, you said it on Jen's podcast.
Oh, okay. Oh, she's a listener. Yeah.
Yeah, so
I know it.
So we've all got a little bit of skin in the game, and are excited to hear and for the listeners to learn more about you and why you're running for school board. I think we always like to start a little bit with folks' background so people can get some context.
Okay.
So do you want to talk about like where you're from and
Sure.
what brought you to this point?
Sure. So I have never run for political office before, but I have been involved in politics pretty much my whole life. I grew up, my mother was a political reporter, and my dad was somebody who was a history major, was a teacher, and then went to become a baseball coach and later an athletic director. And politics and religion were just something that we talked about at the dinner table all the time. So it was kind of like, growing up, I never thought that was all that weird. And then I kind of learned, there's a lot of families that really don't do that
at all.
And so, when I grew up in Tangi local schools. And so my school board was trying to ban 2 books. They were trying to ban The Lovely Bones, and they were trying to ban The Perks of Being a Wallflower, which looking back is wild. But that's where the politics of the board and that community were at the time. And so I was one of the teenagers who stood up and provided testimony against that book ban process, and really learned a lot about what school boards do and the power that they have, and wanted to carry that power throughout my whole life. So I worked on President Obama's re-election campaign, really thought that I wanted to dig into politics, and really believed in the Affordable Care Act. So I moved kind of more into a finance insurance role, became a fundraiser with the American Cancer Society, later worked with the ACLU of Ohio, and now I'm working at a law firm, and I do union side labor law. So I negotiate on behalf of unions and represent low wage and immigrant workers with volunteer work at the Central Ohio Worker Center. So I've been living in Columbus last 9-10 years. And I have loved it, and I plan to stay here. I plan to raise my family here. And I have family who both work in the schools and attend the schools. And so I think during the pandemic was when I really started thinking about an actual school board run. Because like I said before that, I really was involved in politics. I've sat on, the executive committee of the Democratic Party here locally. I've been involved in a lot of different issue-based campaigns and candidate campaigns. I've kind of been somebody that's always been behind the scenes doing stuff. But I think in the pandemic, it started opening my eyes like, man, this is a lot. And this school district, has a nearly $1 billion budget and hundreds of schools, right? And tens of thousands of students that attend and that rely upon not only this board, but the leadership of the school system itself and the leadership of, our state and local government. And watching my nieces go through that, and watching my sister-in-law who was teaching, they were all living with us at the time. So watching them go through the pandemic, I was like, there's just some stuff that we're missing here, and I can feel the buildup. And then also being a union attorney and representing low-income workers throughout the city, I really felt the tension building up, and I was like, you know what? I think this is a time in my life where I have time and I have opportunity. I'm in a good space to really dig in and help out. And I think I can. And then I kind of backed off of it a while and said, maybe I can do something more behind the scenes. I'll dig into that work. And then was really asked to run by some of our friends in labor and some community leaders. They really pushed me to say, Sarah, we need you on there. We need you to do this. And so when I got in the race, there were at that time potentially 6 people, potentially 7 people that were going to run for the 4 seats that are open. So I went in knowing there's a very good chance that I'm not going to make it here, right? But I think that I can bring a voice, and specifically having worked with the Central Ohio Workers Center for the last 4.5 years, there are a lot of low-wage and immigrant workers and people and families in this community being left behind. And so I think that having built those relationships and being able to tell this story, which is what I've been doing, in advocacy at the State House and advocacy at City Hall, I think now it's the time where I can really dig into our schools and help make an impact in that area.
Man, that might be the best answer that we've ever gotten, off of where you came from. Just because I had a lot of things I wanted to interrupt and ask about, but then I was but no, I want to hear what next she's about to say.
Yeah. Can I ask because it's rolling it all the way back, and this is totally unrelated. I just wanted to know what happened with the book bank.
That was my first question too. Yeah, that's crazy.
So
what happened?
It was pulled from the libraries, and so what happened is my younger brother actually already wrote his summer report on one of the books, and it was The Persevering Wallflower, and he loved it, loved the experience of writing the book report, and then was told that he needed to do a new book report because he couldn't do it on that book. And so that's kind of how I became involved. So it was pooled and eventually put back into the library. And now they're both very wildly popular books with incredible storylines.
Yeah.
What was the reason that they were trying to ban them?
Well, one had to do with the concept of death and loss of pregnancy, and one had to do with the experience of being a young gay man growing up in high school experience. And so it's a constant attempt that we see here today,
right?
Where people are trying to suppress the stories of, I don't even want to say marginalized people, but people who are different or who they may not understand or don't want to understand in a lot of cases. And so trying to suppress those stories and those lived experiences, and to do that through education and books is just, it's wild, but it's still very prevalent.
Now, you guys said something else too, about how that experience kind of opened up your eyes about the role of a school board and the power that they have.
Yeah.
It's a question that we talked to some of the other people about earlier this season about, just describing, the role of a school board and, or at least your interpretation of it and the things that they can do and that they can't do. And why you feel like that's where you want to, enter government and enter politics and whatnot.
Yeah. So, through that experience, I saw that they can, one, set the curriculum in the classroom, and they can really have a lot of say on the books that are in your library versus the books that are not. And our current Columbus City Schools, certainly the board has input on, the types of books that are appropriate and not appropriate. I have a friend who works in the prison system and is a librarian. And so the types of books that you're not allowed to have in a prison that are, state mandated are sometimes eye-opening and it can be very interesting. But I think, beyond just the curriculum in the classroom, school boards have power over the policy and the policy decisions that are made. And, it's the superintendent's job and the administration's job to implement the policy. But, it's ultimately the board's responsibility to be responsive to the community. And what we see is that there have been a lot of specifically right-wing attacks on our school boards nationwide because it's a place where it's a pretty low barrier to run for that type of office, and especially in a less competitive school district. And it's a place where you can make a lot of impact, quick impact on the policy, and suppress ideas and suppress critical thought and critical questioning, and control the narrative. And so I think there is this statewide, nationwide, maybe worldwide attack on public education. And we see that in the bills that are coming out of the State House. I mean, we've got bills that are trying to control, young education, and then they're trying to control higher education levels as well, forcing colleges to expend resources to tell both sides of the Holocaust. What's the other side, right?
Right.
I'm a German American, and I'm telling you, the other side has been told.
Yeah.
So what is your fear here? And when you come down to the root of it, the answer is really dark.
Well, I mean, you hear that they're talking about slavery giving you like transferable skills and everything.
Right.
So that's happening now in Florida.
Right.
Yeah. And it's something I think we've already said we both have school-age children. Something that really makes me very concerned. In terms of what my daughter will not be learning, right? Like because I think we can all agree that we've never been given, like, generally in public education, depending on where you went to school, we've never been given the true history of particularly like Black Americans in this country, our contributions, any of that stuff. But to roll it even further back,
I don't know if I can agree with you on that.
Wow, okay, why not?
On this, so like I said, these episodes are really, it's kind of complicated for me because like we were talking about, everybody has an experience with like school systems and everything, but I came from Columbus City Schools, and I think that sometimes there's narratives that are created and it's real easy to latch on them, and like some of the things that people be talking about, I never got that in school. Like, bro, I got that and more. My elementary school, I went to Fifth Avenue Alternative, and it was an international school. I remember being in kindergarten, and I was friends with an Indian, like from the country India, a Jewish girl, a German, a Native American, and I forget the other one, but we all like were friends. It was like watching Captain Planet. It was crazy. And like every year we would have like the World's Fair, where we would like go and explore different cultures and all that type of stuff. Like our Black History units always extended beyond just Black History Month, and we learned about Black history year round. We had the Martin Luther King Day speech competition where students, they had to give their own version of a speech or whatever, but that required research on like why did he feel the way that he felt, and just that type of thing. I mean, there was some sanitation that went into it, but again, while I was in school, this isn't high school now, elementary school, that's where I first read about Huey Newton and Malcolm X and the Black Panthers and all that.
Well, I was kicked out of class for rebutting my teacher. This is a very vivid memory of me getting kicked out of class for rebutting my English teacher's ideas about Malcolm X and how he was, in a sense, dangerous. So I think it depends on where you are, what specific school that you're in, because you also have mentioned that curriculum varies.
No, I'm not saying that it doesn't happen across. Yeah, I'm just saying
I understand what
Columbus
you're saying.
specifically.
I would be curious also to learn about other folks' experiences within CCS as well, depending on what school they are. It may be very similar to yours, but I would just be curious because I wasn't in,
and I can't say I wasn't an outlier, or because I might have been, but I also know I paid attention. And last thing I'll say is that it was in my 11th grade, we were learning about the Great Gatsby, and it was my teacher, Miss Taylor or whatever, that really opened up my eyes and made me fall in love with Jay-Z and everything. You see what I'm saying? And just talking about how this experience that the Great Gatsby was talking about in his book is very similar to, this guy that grew up in Marcy Projects and whatnot. So I don't know, just
I think if you're a good teacher and you're in a district that cares about the students, then you're going to try to draw parallels to what the kids are interested in in, you know, the lesson plan, as you can hear from The Great Gatsby and a Jay-Z reference. Like there's a connection
before the movie
but
too.
There's but there's also like the important work of like the teachers and the school board to understand their, you know, student base to make those things happen. And I think a lot of times that is just not occurring.
Oh yeah.
But want to honor your experience and the experience that you've said that you've had. You've always had good things to say about the district. So which is why
I feel like this position that you're running for is like really important, because like I'm very fond of Columbus City Schools. Yeah. Family members that work in the district, like I said, graduated from it. And I think that whoever is at the helm that's steering it, like, they need to be responsible. They need to be sober-minded and not just think, oh, the school is all broken and we need to tear everything down. I think that there is a lot of things that need to be improved on, things that we talked about throughout the season. But there's also like a lot of good things that's happening as well. And that's just good things. My opinion, you know? Yeah. So yeah, I agree. That's why I want to live here, right? And that's why I want to raise a family here, you know, because I see a lot of value in that. And I feel really lucky. I guess going back to your last conversation, I think it's wild that, you know, I was a fairly well-read student. I paid attention in school. I took AP history. I took AP government. I took those things. And I didn't learn about Black Wall Street until I was in my late 20s. I didn't know about it. I mean, I didn't know anything about it. So I think that there is a lot of truth in you are a product of the environment that you're raised and the education of the person that's at the helm of your education. And if they're somebody who's gonna intentionally expose you to stuff, I think that's good. I think exposure is good. And that's something that I really value about how my parents raised us, is that when I was younger, I didn't play OYAA, which is Olentangy Youth Athletic Association sports. I actually played in Delaware because my parents were very much like, I want you to know that not everybody lives like the kids that live around you, right? And I want you to know that, you know, there are different people in the world, socioeconomic status, religion, race, class, you know, gender ID, any of that, and that is really cool. And that's something that, you know, you can learn from everybody. There is something to learn from everybody. And so I think having that experience, I really value that about Columbus City, is that Columbus is so diverse. I mean, and you know, you look at the makeup of our schools, if you go somewhere like like somewhere in Clintonville versus you go out, you know, on the northeast side versus you go on the south side, or you go out, you know, on the far east side, those schools are gonna look and feel very different. And it's very cool because it's reflective of the community, right? And I think that there's a lot of value in that. And it's one of my most exciting pieces about Columbus City Schools, is that there are a lot of opportunities and a lot of potential. But there are a lot of things that we also have to work on. And really dig into. You want to take it?
My question was just going to be, so is that something that you feel like you're going to really champion if you are elected to the school board? Like being, you know, making sure that the curriculum and the needs of the current student population and their parents and guardians are met with what you see as the strengths of the community, like being inclusive and being responsive to the needs of the community based on not just based off of one blanket idea that everyone is the same, but like, no, let's be responsive school by school, even if it, you know, takes more work to do so. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And I'll go ahead and plug my sister-in-law, but she is an art teacher, and now she's at downtown, but she was at Independence High School. And one of the coolest projects I think she did was that she gave her students free rein to interpret things that people misinterpret about them into art. And it's one of the projects that her students most looked forward to. And so to see, you know, people flipping things like stereotypes that are being, portrayed or forced on them, and turning that into art and reflections of how they see themselves in the world was a really cool project. And they really dissected not only, the artistic part of it, like what elements are you using, what time period are you referring to, what artistic styles have you incorporated in your art, but also into the socioeconomic part of it, like where does this stereotype come from, and who created that stereotype? Who is saying that about you, and why are you, why does it affect you, and that kind of stuff. So I think that those experiences are really important and really dig at a very deep level. They're the projects that you'll always remember. I remember in Tangi, one of the projects that really stuck with me, and I think why I was so interested in working with immigrant workers and that kind of stuff, is that I took Spanish 5, and my Spanish 5 teacher did a project where we had to go through the immigration system legally, and then we had to think about, if we didn't have the funds, or we didn't, whatever else, if we wanted to come in illegally, what is that experience like? And we had to chart out both. And it was very eye-opening to see how much money and how difficult it is to get in this country legally, especially if you come from a country that is brown or black. Because there are quotas. There straight up are quotas to this day in the United States where people from this country, this many people can come in, and people from this country, this many can come in. And, you look at the wars that are happening worldwide, and this is digging maybe too much into the worldwide aspect, but I thought that project and that experience was something that really stuck with me because it was creative, it was interesting, it was relevant, and it played not only into like the aspects that we were learning in our Spanish class, but also just understanding the world around us and how we fit within it. And it really drove me to like want to advocate on behalf of immigrant workers and work alongside immigrant workers, because seeing that process go through, when folks say, well, why can't they just come here legally? Well, not everybody has the same opportunities. My family is originally from Germany, and the German quota is very different than the El Salvadorian quota, right? And so when you ask why, well, that's the question, right?
Man,
and think about if people actually got their question answered, right? Like if that question was answered for them in 10th grade, versus them having to go seek out that information when they're a working, person who's busy with children, right? Yeah. So if we can expose folks to this is the actual process. Now you can take from it what you would like, but this is the actual true process of what people experience. And it also, just strengthens your critical thinking skills. And so, things like that do shape how you see what public schools can do, right? Like, I believe that public schools can operate at a very high level if they have the right resources to do so. So, thanks for pointing that out.
Yeah. What I would say, and it's a question, and it's something that I've really just been kind of wrestling with, again, every time we talk to like a candidate for the school board, is that this position, at least the way that I understand it, like I said, this is the most I've ever paid attention to this particular race, right? It's a governing position, just not like a legislative. So they're not like grant like policy and all that type of stuff. It's more about just how you're running like the district and whatnot. And because of that, it's almost like when you're giving some speech or you're talking about why you want to be on the school board, like there's only really one good answer to say, because I love the schools, I care about the schools, we want to make sure our kids are taken care of, blah, blah, blah. And I guess one thing that I'm curious, really for everybody that's running, but especially people that are like challenging and that aren't already incumbents, it's like was there something that the school board was not doing that you were like dissatisfied with, and say, I can do that better, or there is another way, or we're not doing enough? Like, what was your pull factor to get you to like choose this race to run for? And I was going to ask you earlier, like, because you said that your colleagues, they told you like, oh, we really need you to step up and do this. Like, what was the push factor for them that like was telling them that you need to put your hat in the ring?
Yeah, I think having run, a fairly successful, a very successful nonprofit organization in the community, I've built lots of relationships with people in various sectors and in different demographics. I've also worked with city council and was part of the coalition and the team that really pushed our council to pass the wage theft ordinance, which basically just says if you're somebody who's found guilty of committing wage violations against workers, we're not going to do business with you, or we're going to have these steps that we can take. And that's something that wasn't on file at City Hall, right? And so I think people had seen that I was somebody that could get stuff done and could talk to people in both a respectful way and in a I'm going to push you way. And I think that that's something that our school board could also do. I think that we're doing it to some degree, but I think that we can always do it better and make sure that, we're advocating on behalf of our public education system. We're the largest school in the state by far, right? School district in the state. So I think that one of my push factors was I would like to be out there and help create some of these voices and challenge, some of our local lawmakers and challenge some of our local statewide lawmakers and really put a voice to the experience of the school system and help elevate the voices that are already doing this work. And so I think that was push number one. I think push number two was, leading into the teacher strike, collective bargaining and union relationships are not something that just happen overnight. The only time that the union is speaking with the school board is not only during bargaining, it's a constant relationship. And I could feel it and we could see it in the community coming and breaking down over time. And so I think that, that's not the fault of any one individual necessarily. It happens in labor relations, but I think that understanding that world really well and understanding where people are coming from on both sides of the table, I think that that's something that I'll be able to jump in and help out with is just fostering that relationship and really developing it outside of bargaining so that when the school district gets to bargaining with a labor union, that we're not coming to the table and now deciding we're going to solve the issue, like having these open conversations the whole time so that when we get to bargaining, it's more of okay, we've talked about what we can do. This is what we think we can actually do. What do you have that's better? And kind of creating that conversation from there. So I think just fostering the relationships is something that I've been doing quietly and something that I would like to continue to do, both quietly and very publicly. And so I think that would help. I think too, just like creating transparency to the system and uplifting the really good things that are happening in this school. I think that's one thing that our district can do better is just talk about the really cool opportunities that our students are having. And not just on the CCS like Facebook page or whatever.
Or even the website.
Right? We got to go beyond that. We've got to get those stories out there. And so we've got to get creative about how we do that.
I have a historical marker that my AP US history class wrote.
Yeah.
We had to do like primary interviews and research and everything with people in this Black community that was like split apart when they were spreading out the highway systems and everything. And it's still there. Like I take my daughter to go see it and at the bottom it says Centennial High School. Yeah. I agree. I think that, that is something that we could do a better job of like talking about like those type of cool projects and everything.
And talking about the truth. I mean, the truth is our school buildings are a mess. The truth is we have some schools that are massively under enrolled and there are a lot of opportunities and there are going to be some really tough decisions coming forward for our district. But I think that if we're open and honest with what the actual issue is, what we've considered and where we are, that we can have real conversations. People in our school district are smart. They are capable and they can understand this stuff. They just don't have the time to spend hours digging into it. So we need to put things in terms and in platforms and in media types that people actually digest and not just like hope that it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Well, make it digestible, right? Like everything cannot be communicated in the same ways.
Right.
You know, people, even just, I think that's one of the great things about our podcast. We communicate political issues in a different way than I think you see anywhere else locally, and for like a specific segment of people. And I think they just need some segmentation. Like everyone cannot receive this information in the same way. And then
Don't
I also
catch me at the town hall. Like, that's just not my bag.
Exactly.
But that's how they get the information out to the people.
But we have some really incredible community leaders in the city of Columbus. We really do. There are some incredible community leaders. Let's plug them in and let them lead. Let them carry the conversation to their own community. Let them be involved in the process. Let them take ownership of part of the process, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, you know, when you look at immigrant communities or really any really tight-knit community, there are natural leaders within that community. We can identify them if we just
That's a great
ask.
point.
So, I mean,
I never thought about it like that, though.
There's a socialization piece to it, right? Like you can't just say to somebody one time, hey, your school, there's not enough people enrolled in your school, and so we're going to need to close it. Like there is a storytelling. There's steps to that to get people to, one, get the information, understand the information, and start to accept the information. Because we talked about this on the episode with Brandon, that people are very like emotional about their schools. So there's a piece of that to accept. Like there is just not enough people. In 1960, I know it was a lot of people there. Now, because of like whatever it is, give them the reason, there's not as many people there anymore. So we have to do this. So you can't just dump all of that one time and then, you know,
but also
walk away
like,
from it.
The opportunities are great when we come together. Like my school, you know, was very new at the time, and we had like almost 2,000 kids. So when you have almost 2,000 students going, you can offer a lot of APs. You can offer a lot of extracurriculars. You can offer a lot of things because you're all in one spot. In Columbus, we're kind of spread out, and it does make it difficult.
That was the confession I was going to make. Is that up until this season, I didn't know the reason why they closed schools. Like it just never, I thought maybe it's because they were old or they were outdated or whatever. I didn't understand it was about consolidating populations and putting a bunch of students in one building so that, number one, you have more dollars going into it, but also so that you could offer more things. Like it just, nobody's ever explained it to me. You know?
I think how we do that is just as important as why we do that. And making sure that we're not only doing that in communities of color and that we're not only doing that in poorer communities, right? Where those students now have to rely on a bus system, whereas the kids in the more white parts of Columbus get to walk down to their schools, right? So I think being intentional about this is also very, very key.
Well, because there's also an education piece around, well, maybe you should consider sending your kids to a school that maybe you would have never considered sending them to. I think if people like understand the history of Columbus too, and that gets broken down in a truthful way, and maybe we can't depend on the school district to do that, but like we are all a community, and we can all take some stock into learning about that and teaching about it, right? The people that were here and went through it, like, y'all can tell the stories. People can get a better understanding. But one thing I want to ask you before I forget, because it's been sticking out in my mind, is like you've mentioned like your experience. So you're an attorney, you've got experience with unions and things, and you've got some experience working with immigrant communities. Is there anybody currently on the school board now that sort of has I know that there's some attorneys on the board and things like that, but that has like your specific experience, or would that be something new that you would be bringing to the board?
I think
question.
Aspects of it people probably have some experience with, but I don't think, and nobody on the board, as far as I know, has ever been a union attorney or has ever, personally negotiated the collective bargaining agreement to the extent that I have. And then I'm not aware of anybody who's necessarily leading an immigrant led and focused organization. So, I think that is a specific expertise that I could bring that would add to the collective experiences that already exist on the board. And, I think Dr. Tina Pierce, who is also running this year, is a good example where she has a very academic background and has a lot of experience and has written papers about what is successful in educating our students and getting them to pass and graduate, right? That is not my expertise. So I'm going to rely on her a lot. And I'm going to do my own reading and my own research, but I'm going to need to rely on her a lot for that expertise. And, other board members have certainly their own expertise. I guess board member Ramona Reyes would be a good example because she does lead the Our Lady of Guadalupe Center. And so she definitely has a lot of experience. Both living within an immigrant-centered community and then advocating on behalf of. So that would be one example.
Yeah.
So I got a question about did you have a follow-up with that?
No, I was.
Okay.
Yep.
Like just for expectations and everything from the voters' side, right?
Yeah.
Because change doesn't happen overnight.
It does not.
It is something that does take time. If in your eyes, like in the ideal world, what does Columbus City Schools look like, a year from now? Like, should you be elected onto school board? And then also, like, the next time that elections come around, like, what does it look like, when that time period is over?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I'm not currently on the board, so I've had really no input in this.
Right.
But there will be a levy on the ballot. And that is something that is going to be pretty contentious for many of our community members.
I'm so glad you said that. Because we need to talk about that.
Be.
Maybe not on this episode, but we do need to talk about that levy.
Yeah, that levy is going to be huge.
Yeah.
And it's so needed. I mean, we need it. And a lot of the criticisms, it's just it can be a bad situation because if we had a full funding program coming from the State House, we wouldn't be putting so much downward pressure on our local municipalities to make up this difference. But here we are.
That's true.
And we as a district, not me because I was not on the board, but we as a district made promises to, pay our staff good wages and to make repairs in the buildings and to offer a level of care and quality education, and that costs money. So we need to pass that levy. But I think also, looking forward next year, I'm hoping that we have a clear financial plan and that we have a clear building plan. And so that we can actually go out into the community and talk about that. And then what I would like to see when I am, hopefully running around for the next election, I would like to see some of the outcomes of those processes and see deeper community involvement and engagement with our school system. And so I would like to be part of the team that helps build that and have those community messengers out there carrying the message and giving the input and, a two-way street of both giving the input and then going out there and speaking about the positive aspects of our schools. So I think that's what I would really like to see by the time that I come around. And then, of course, increasing our graduation rates and making sure that we're creating all the opportunities that we can for students that involve college, which is great with this Columbus Promise program. And there's a lot of really good opportunity. But we really need to make sure that those students that are going into those programs are finishing and doing everything that we can to make sure that we're putting them in the best position for that. And then also, our city is growing. The trades are a huge opportunity. And we do have some programs. I would like to see those expand and really grow with our city.
So 2 questions for me. One, and I'll just ask
I need to
one
start
and
asking
then
more
ask
questions,
the next
man.
one.
Yeah, I need compound questions.
Sorry. So the one question is, in terms of the Columbus Promise, I don't know how much you know about it, and maybe I should be asking somebody else, like, I don't know, maybe Shannon, this question, but I'm going to ask you because you're sitting here. Is there current data around, I'm not even sure how long it's been in motion, maybe 2-3 years.
Couple years.
Is there any data yet around students who are going into the Columbus Promise program and that are finishing at the end of it?
I know that the data that I've seen is that our Columbus State is typically a 2-year program. And what we're seeing is that our graduates are going into Columbus State, and what should be a 2-year program becomes a 6-year program.
Oh,
and so I don't know all the answers for why that is. I am interested in exploring that.
Yeah.
I don't have all of the information about the effects of the Columbus Promise program, but I know that a lot of students are enrolling in it. So it's successful in the sense that students are enrolling, but I would like to see what are the outcomes.
And
are they finishing
finished in 2 years?
Right.
Yeah.
And are they continuing on? Right. So you get
Right.
that first 2-year programming. Do you want to seek further education, or what are you doing with that education? So I would like to see more of that information.
Same here, because I think that, if you know what the data says, then you can start to make changes if changes need to be made, or you can tell the story, right? That they're going and they're finishing and they're going on to, finish 2 years at a 4-year institution or whatever else they're doing after that. So I think that definitely goes into our let's tell the story about what's happening. And then in terms of the levy, so for folks, because I've been hearing people saying don't support the levy because, we
got words for y'all. Just know.
Saying, very to me preemptively, don't support the levy because what have they done with our money in the past? It's going to make your taxes go up. I think it's almost $200 per $100,000 your house costs, which I think is targeting a very specific group of people, people who are going to go out there and vote, right? Because they're concerned about that, and saying don't support because what have they done with our money in the past? If somebody was to say that to you, and I know you're not on the board yet, but if someone was to say that to you, what would you say is the reason that they should support the levy?
The 1-second answer, I guess, is we have to do this for our kids. Our kids need this. We have to do this for our kids. Yeah. The longer answer is I hear what you're saying. I hear the concern about raising taxes in an environment where many people are going into very real conversations with their family about what they're going to do about their homes. I hear that. I hear concerns about how that's going to affect the individuals, and especially, the homeowners and the renters who the homeowners will pass that on to. I hear that concern. I also do think it's really important to point out to people that until a levy gets passed, you're consistently taxed at that same rate. So your taxes don't just increase because time has gone on. So we're still at that old tax rate. We need this levy to get that new money. And without it, we're operating at the same level that we've been operating 5-6 years ago. Yeah, inflation's hitting you. It's hitting our schools too. It's hitting our kids. Right? Yeah. And so voting against this levy is voting against children's futures in this community. We're taking away the opportunity and the possibility that we have. Can we allocate money more responsibly? Can we be more transparent? 100% yes. We always can. Yes. So I think my answer would be first, we have to do this. It's for our kids. I hear your concern, and it is very valid and it is very real, but let's address what the root cause of that is and not deprive our students of what we actually need, not deprive our teachers and our families who struck last year and were in fear for what their futures were going to hold because they were holding out for a better thing, for the, the other staff that work in these buildings that are, that have issues, right? Yeah. And we need to do this for our kids. So I think that, it's a really hard conversation to have, and some people are going to oppose it. And that's how it's going to be. But at some point, we have to increase that budget. The State House is pinching local municipalities on purpose, and the purpose is to destroy public education.
Yeah,
they want us to fail. They are intending to put us in positions to let us fail. We can't allow that to happen.
Well, and I agree 100%. Sometimes I feel like on this show I need to be objective, but that's not the point of the show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We're not like the Dispatcher or anything. We don't need to be objective. I feel the same way you feel, and I feel like pass the levy and hold people's feet to the fire afterwards. Like if we have to go to the board meetings about the budget, if we have to say how are you using our money, that's what we do as the public afterwards. But like, what is it going to look like for our grandkids and you know, generations after us if we don't pass a levy now, knowing that our city is doing nothing but growing.
And I think too, like the underlying concerns. So if what you're concerned about is, you know, tax foreclosures being a big thing because people can't pay, they can't afford the increase in taxes on their property. Well, let's talk about what the increase actually is. And then if you can't afford it, why don't we have safety nets set up to support you and your family and get you through this? Why aren't we beating, you know, on council's door, on the State House's door, on our federal congressional representatives' doors and senators' doors, saying we need help. You are pinching us too hard, right? And so I think there's a bigger conversation too.
Yeah.
I think that I don't want to make this episode about something else, but I will say this. I think that there are some organizations and figureheads that are resting on the laurels of their own legacy, and they're more concerned with like having an opinion and saying, oh, well, we're great and historic and blah, blah, blah. And they're not looking enough to tomorrow and thinking about tomorrow and the fact that we need, you know, aggressive action today to make sure that there is a tomorrow. And I think that those people should stop looking in the past and, you know, look ahead. That's all. I like how you said that, though. I'm just going to clip up your, you know, sentiment. And now anytime somebody asks about the levy, I'm just going to send that to them because that was perfectly said. Yeah.
I think anytime we ask anything or answer anything, it's either a yes and or a no and, because things are not black and white. Things are not clear cut. And the greater conversation that we should be having around public education, transparency around our school boards, you know, our housing crisis that we're going through right now in this city and nationwide. Those are hard questions to ask, but we have to keep asking them and drilling them down. And what can we do? What's the policy that we can do to alleviate this concern, right?
Somebody needs to make an infographic of the domino effects of not passing the levy.
It's bad.
Because I bet you that somebody's making an infographic of the domino effects of passing.
That's facts.
Of passing it. So I think if people understand, like, what does this mean in the long term, better action or some action will be taken. So, I feel very strongly about that.
Yeah.
In case it's not clear.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And, you know, I keep telling people, I'm like, hey, you know, I had no part of this levy, certainly. I had no part of the conversation around when we do it. But do I support it? Yes, because we have to do it for our kids. We need to pass a levy for our kids. Yeah.
So let me ask you
got my blood boil.
This is not a hard question, honestly. It's maybe an uncomfortable question. My question is we know that Columbus City Schools is a predominantly Black and brown district, and somebody looks at you and they say, why do you care about what's going on with us, and why should I vote for you? What would you say?
I would say my intent is to use every privilege that I've been given because of where I was raised, because of the color of my skin, because of the opportunities that I've been given in this life, to really advocate for our schools and for all students in the district, not just students who look like me or who identify like me or who have similar lived experiences. And in fact, I would say that I would like to be more involved in advocating for the voices that are either left unheard or ignored. And I think that I can provide some experience that would resonate with the decision makers in the room, but also add some exposure and I'm going to rely on the community to continue to educate me, because do I know what it's like to grow up very poor? No, I don't. I never had to do it. Do I know what it's like to grow up a person of color and have, systems set up for you to fail or to be less successful? No, I don't. To the extent that I am a woman, I have some of that, but a lot of that is alleviated by other aspects of my life. But I do want to be somebody who is accessible to the community, who listens. I intentionally try to learn more, and I want people to educate me on the real lived experiences so that I can walk into rooms that my privilege allows me to walk into and share that story and fight for those causes. So that's why I would say.
So using your privilege for good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
So I got a 2-part question too, because I can ask those as well.
Sorry, I went on a roll, didn't I?
It's all good. But mine's a little bit more simple. I guess maybe one of them is, the first question is just, how has your experience been, running for office? Because this is you running for the first time. And then the second part of that question is I'll wait until after. Yeah.
So the experience has been pretty good. Honestly, it's been fun. The race has unfolded in ways that have continued to surprise me. But I've found a lot of support within the community, within the board themselves. People have been pretty open and honest with me about what they see as, the biggest barriers and what's going on in the district. And I'm really grateful that, President Adair has said, hey, I want to fold you into some of this and get you up to speed so that you know what you're talking about and that you know what we're working on and where we could go and that you can start giving input now, right? And so I'm really grateful for that. And then just the receipt that I've felt from the community all over this community has been so great. And I'm learning a lot just by listening. And so that's one of my favorite things to do is to, set up an event somewhere and say, hey, I want to come and speak with you, and keep my speech real short and just listen, because people will tell you what's on the top of their mind. And I want to know that information. And it goes back to kind of using the privilege for good. I don't intend to just use the privilege for myself to advocate in these rooms. I want to lift the next person behind me, and I hope that next person behind me is somebody who is really reflective of our community, and open that door and create a seat and allow opportunity to expound from these conversations.
My bad, I was just processing what you were saying. And I don't think I want to ask the second question anymore, because I don't know if it's all the way fair. But I'll give you just the scope so you can speak to it if you want to.
Yeah.
But it's about privilege and everything as well.
Yeah.
And like being connected with like a lot of different institutions of power and stuff here in Columbus as is. That's one thing that I think that Taria and I have both been pretty vocal critics of, I would say, of like how Columbus feels like it's a, just a churning system where it's like, all right, here's somebody, all right, they're cool, so let's bring them in or whatever, blah, 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 and just kind of rinse and repeat. And I don't know, I didn't know how to word the question or whatever about like how that feels, or if you feel like you're a beneficiary of that at all, and why somebody that might be skeptical about Columbus politics should still support you despite that?
Yeah. Well, I would say I pretty openly run as a progressive candidate. I have been both inside the rooms and outside, calling and hoping that somebody picks up the phone on the other end just so that they can hear out, the idea or the issue, whatever it is. And so I think having been on the outside and on the inside, I kind of see like where it's at. And there is a lot we can do to create more opportunities for people to be involved, and to really challenge some of who we think ought to be in spots and then who ought to be taking leadership roles, and how effective some of our folks are. I think that's true probably in any level of government throughout the United States. There's probably some of that, but I think that part of what is successful is being somebody who really listens to your community and is involved and continues the work, doesn't just like get elected and sit on some ivory tower somewhere, and then every 4 years or 3 years in the case of school board, when you're running again, deciding, oh, now I'm involved in that, now I show up to all these events, and now I'll come to your meeting and listen to you. Well, where were you the last 3 years, right? Or where were you the last 4 years? So really being that servant leader, that's what I want to be. And I think that identifying more servant leaders who are there for the right reason and not just there for a resume builder, or to get to the next thing, whatever the next thing is. I think that's important. And that's okay. To have ambition is not bad, right? It's not wrong to want to grow and to want to be something more. But when you do it, and you take for granted the work that you really need to put in if you take on a role like this, I think is a disservice to the community.
Yeah.
I can respect that.
Well, I have really enjoyed getting to like sit here and talk to you and hear about your background, and particularly just your experience with unions. I think seeing what occurred this last year was very eye-opening, I think, to also we talked about this on another show. We're in the midst of a labor movement.
Yeah.
And so having someone that can speak that language, because at the end of the day, it all trickles down to affect our students.
Yeah.
And so to have someone that sort of speaks that language, I think it could be really valuable. And so I just appreciate hearing more about that from you, and really excited to see, to hear more about your campaign and to see how everything shakes out. And
how can the people find out more about you as a candidate? And then
So
besides listen to this great episode,
so you can visit my website at sarahforcolumbus.com. And if you want to get in touch with me, I am accessible. I'm not in 7 Mile Tower, and I want to hear from folks. So just email me at sarah@sarahforcolumbus.com, and it's sarah@Columbus.com.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Appreciate you guys.
This is good.
Thank you.
All right, Rizzo.